And joining me right now, as I had mentioned earlier on in this episode, is a very, very near and dear friend of mine, and that's Mr. Bob Davison. Bob, welcome to the other leg, Andy's Music Vaults, and the first guest on this sub two-leg show.
Well, Andy, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, when I was plotting out the shows to do, and you and I have a lot of common interest in terms of music, and I knew one of the first ones I would do would be on Bob Dylan, and I knew I had to get you on because you are the reason why this show is happening right now. It's I owe it all to you. So thank you for that. Thank you for introducing me.
My pleasure.
Thank you for opening up a world of music to me that I probably never would have considered had I not met you. So very appreciative that we became friends a number of years back.
And I'm very happy to be friends with you. And as you've learned, the world of Bob Dylan's music kind of goes on forever. You're never done.
Pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, it's still going.
And there's still more coming.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Bob, why don't you tell everybody, tell the audience a little bit about your early days as a fan and how you discovered Bob Dylan and what drew you to him?
I got to take you back to about 1973. And I think what's important, I was 12 years old at the time, and what's important to remember, there was no internet. There wasn't the amount of media that we have today, no cable TV. So I experienced rock and roll out of a transistor radio and WABC AM radio. Ron Lundy, Dan Ingram, those guys. So at the time, me and my buddies, we were huge Elton John fans, Stevie Wonder fans, Paul Simon. We all liked Paul Simon. All the Motown stuff was played on WABC all the time. And about that time, the Red and Blue Beatles albums came out, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. April of 73. Yeah.
My buddy Ronaldo was the only kid in the block that had an actual stereo. So, we got the Red and White Beatle albums and just started to listening to those every day in, day out, over and over and over again. So, that was kind of my experience with rock and roll. And I had heard of Bob Dylan, but I don't think I had ever heard a Bob Dylan song that I recalled. I heard Blown in the Wind by Peter, Paul, and Mary. I think I had heard Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds, but I don't remember listening to Bob Dylan per se. And in fact, in our music class in 7th grade, the music instructor was teaching music, and he actually taught about Blown in the Wind, The Times They Are Changing, and the Dylan version of Mr. Tambourine Man, none of which I had heard. I had just heard about it. So for me, he was some mystical figure out there in the ether somewhere, that seemed to have some social capital in society. So that was kind of my initial hearing about Bob Dylan. But I remember in the music book that we had in our 7th grade music class, I remember reading the words to Blowing in the Wind and The Times They Are Changing and Mr. Tambourine Man. I read the words before I heard the songs, I remember reading the words and being drawn to that for one reason or another. So that was kind of my first experience with Bob Dylan, was probably the written word rather than actually listening to his music. And then shortly after that, I was 13 or 14 and I was babysitting. And, the kids had gone to bed and I started listening to the parents' record collection. And the dad had a big set of headphones, which was unusual for 1974, 1975. So I put the headphones on and I put the jack in and I'm going through the records. And I saw Highway 61 Revisited. And I was drawn by the album cover. It's one of the coolest album covers I've ever seen. And I think what's lost somewhat on maybe your generation, and certainly the current generation, is how important albums and album covers were. They sold records. So I saw this guy, Bob Dylan, sitting with that purple shirt on and the motorcycle T-shirt with the hair. And I'm like,
Sitting on the stoop. Yep.
Right. Yeah, sitting on the stove. And I said to myself, look at this. I got to listen to this. So I put it on. Side one, song one was Like a Rolling Stone. It was like the top of my head blew off when I heard that. And then I listened to the entire album about 3 times. And I think then I listened to Like a Rolling Stone 5 or 6 times in a row. I had never heard anything like that. And I couldn't quite explain what he was singing about and what it was all about, but I knew I wanted to be a part of it. There was something going on there that I wanted to be a part of. And I think what it was in hindsight was it was somebody that was clearly was thinking differently, that thought differently about the world. And I remember having that experience a little bit with the Beatles' Strawberry Fields. And a buddy of mine was a big Yes fan at the time, and he was into progressive rock. And I remember listening to that and thinking, man, those guys are thinking about the world differently.
Very different.
But something about Dylan, maybe because he was an American voice, really connected with me more than those other artists at the time. So that's when I really got attracted to the music of Bob Dylan. And then this kid, I remember talking about this record, Highway 61 Revisited, at junior high or high school, I forget where. And this kid, Jeff Yeager, was a classmate of mine. And his dad was an exec at Columbia Records.
Oh.
So he goes, Bob Dylan's putting out a new record. You want a copy? And I said, sure. And I think at the time I had purchased Bob Dylan's Greatest Hits and Highway 61 and, maybe some of the early folk records that I really liked too. So he brought in for demonstration only, not for sale, was actually stamped on the record label, Blood on the Tracks. And it was a blue cover.
Not red. Not that one.
It was blue.
Right.
It was blue. So I think it was I don't know. Keep in mind, this is 1975. No internet. I knew nothing about different versions of songs and remixes. All of that hadn't happened yet. You had the record.
You had the record, and that was it.
That was it. It was all magic. So what I think I didn't realize it at the time, was the original New York recordings.
Before
that I came to learn that he scrapped
a
couple of days before. But I didn't know what I had. Or else I would have saved it. I wouldn't have known.
How could you have known? Right.
So I remember listening to that over and over and over and over again, and just saying, "Oh my God, this is unreal." And what was interesting about that, I was probably about 14 at the time, and Blood on the Tracks, like most of Dylan's material, but Blood on the Tracks is really an adult themed record about love and loss and those type of things. None of which I had really experienced. But again, I'm like, whatever this guy's singing about, I want a piece of that.
You want in, even though
I want in on those emotional experiences, good and bad, that he's having.
Even though you were a teenager.
Even though I was a teenager, and I certainly didn't understand the range of the experiences that he was singing about. I'm 61 now, and I'm not quite sure some days, but I knew it was human, and I knew it was important. So then I remember I started going to the Caldwell Library, and I started checking out books about Bob Dylan and magazine articles about Bob Dylan. And then I heard that, he liked poets like Dylan Thomas and Lawrence Ferlinghetti and Sylvia Plath and on and on and on. So I started reading those poets too, which I really enjoyed. So Dylan got me into poetry as well.
Poetry, sure.
Or being a Dylan fan got me into poetry as well. And then I think I heard Scott Muni on WNEW, because now I was in FM radio, right?
AM is gone, and now
I'm in FM radio.
Now you're into FM, mid-70s, late 70s.
Right. I remember Scott Muni talking about, how Dylan was influenced by Robert Johnson. So I'm thinking, who the hell's Robert Johnson? I had no idea who that was. So I went down to a record store in Montclair. I forget the name. It was on Bloomfield Avenue, and I got some Robert Johnson bootlegs. And then I started listening to that. The next thing I know, I'm listening to all the blues stuff that Dylan liked as well. And also around the same time, there was on Bloomfield Avenue in Caldwell, there was a storefront, the Caldwell Studio of Music, and they used to put the new records as well as some old records right out there in the storefront. And I remember actually walking down the street and seeing Blood in the Tracks had finally formally come out. I had an advanced copy.
Your test pressing is what you had.
Yeah. Blood in the Tracks had formally come out. And I remember going, wow, it's red.
You had this, and you're like, that's not the one I had.
Yeah. And actually, I think my memory is that's a better album cover. It was more, it really jumped out of the storefront. So I went in and purchased that. And in another podcast, I'll tell you, that's also how I brought Abbey Road, because they would put some of at the time the older records up. I remember looking at Abbey Road going, I don't know what that is, but I want to be part of it. Those four guys crossing the street.
Older records, meaning it's 5 or 6 years old, which is ancient. In those days, it's ancient, right?
Right. So then I just started, buying everything that he put out to that date. Desire came out shortly after that. Hard Rain came out, and then I had everything that he ever put out up until that point. The Hard Rain special, I think, was on Channel 2 in 1976 or something like that. And I really enjoyed that. I mean, I still remember how taken I was with the version of Shelter from the Storm
from that album,
from that special. So then, from then on, I was just a major Dylan fan.
You mentioned that you took you went to the Caldwell Library and you took books out. And one of the things I showed some of my Dylan book collection earlier. And one of the ones that I read last year was the Tony Scaduto book. Was that one of your first early reads?
I believe so. We're going back a while, Andy, but I believe there wasn't a lot of Dylan books at the time. There was 3 or 4.
Right. So not like now.
It's not like now. Now it goes on forever.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's interesting, and it's an interesting book to even look now. Even though I read it, and it hasn't been done since then. But to look at it, it's nice to look at books that were published back then, because the writer's frame of mind is different. He's analyzing the artist and different. Dylan obviously even by 73 was obviously an iconic figure. Right. But it grew. It's grown in the 40 plus years since 1973 when book was published. So it's interesting to look at books that were written at the peak of an artist. And Tony Scaduto's book is one of those, because it goes up till about 73 when he was doing the soundtrack to Pat Garrett.
You happen to have that there? You know what the cover looks like?
I do. Give me 1 second. I'll grab it. Hold on.
Right.
Here's the cover.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Paperback.
Yep.
Dollar store, but just a good early biography on Dylan, and there's so many now. So many.
And I think as a result of reading that biography, I found out how into Woody Guthrie he was. So then I started buying Woody Guthrie records that were very hard to get in the 1970s in Caldwell, New Jersey.
I would imagine so. Did you have to? You have to specially order them? How did you track those down?
I believe the gentleman who owned the Caldwell Studio of Music sent me, I think my mother drove me to some place in New Providence that had some of the old Dust Bowl recordings, I think they were called. And, so I got that there. And I'm still a Woody Guthrie fan.
Yeah. So, it's funny you talked about discovering his music and his songwriting style being mature. Even though you were a teenager, you were drawn to it. And one of the things I talked about to open up this show was basically, depending on where you are in your life, those themes and that style of music may not grab you until you're a certain age. Now, this music was you heard it as a teenager and was like, I want to be part of that. To borrow your words, you wanted in somewhere those themes, which are very, very mature themes, you resonated with as a teenager, which speaks to maybe you were just maybe more mature for your age. I, on the other hand, somebody who was a teenager in the 1990s, I couldn't be bothered with it. But as somebody who's in their early 40s now, I really resonate with it. So it's interesting to see where people pick it up and why. I'm fascinated by that.
It's funny. I was a Beatles fan in the 70s because who wasn't a Beatles fan? But I got more into their music as I got older. Particularly the McCartney stuff. I mean, the McCartney solo stuff I missed in the 70s. I dismissed it. It just didn't resonate with me. I don't know why. When I listen to that stuff today, I think it's absolutely stunning. But at the time, for whatever reason, I missed it. So I was a Beatles fan. I had a real affinity for the Lennon solo stuff that I still have. But I became a much bigger Beatles fan as time went on, and a much, much bigger McCartney fan. And I can't explain that. Yeah.
It's very interesting to see why we fall into these things when they hit us.
The thing with Dylan that I think that's always appealed to me, Andy, is he lays out just a range of images, just mental images through his use of language, whether it's Desolation Row or Murder Most Foul.
Right. I mean, from one of his earliest ones to all the recent ones. Right.
Right. So when I listen to those two songs, every time I listen to those two songs, and Visions of Johanna for that matter,
of course,
the mental imagery that it invokes in my mind is just endless.
Right.
Just the images and the memories that I get. It just goes on forever.
You've said this because we've seen him in concert. I've seen him twice with you, and it's like watching an artist at work when we've seen him do his thing, and that's what you said that to me. And you listen to these songs, it's like listening to an artist, at work with paint a picture with these words. Whether it's the songs Murder Most Foul, Brownsville Girl, any of these songs that are epic, they go on and on, but your mind takes you everywhere with the lyrics. I agree with you 1,000%.
I mean, we saw Dylan back at the Beacon. When was that? In November, right? Just last 2021.
Yeah.
I mean, he was stunning, and he performed. I think most of the concert, as I recall, was off of Rough and Rowdy Ways.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you exactly what each of those songs, quote unquote, mean. But the mental imagery that he just calls up is unreal, and particularly that evening in that setting with the lighting, it was really, and the musicians that he had, they were stunningly good.
Yeah. Well, I have been fortunate to see. I mean, we'll kind of segue into the next part of the conversation. I've been considered blessed to have seen Bob Dylan twice now, but Bob has seen Bob Dylan in concert well over 50 times. I don't even think you can put a number on it at this point.
No, it's well over 50 times because I've been going to see him since 1978. And every time he comes around, I go at least once.
That is incredible. Let's talk about your first Dylan concert experience, and then segue into some of your memorable concerts. And please tell us about going to the 1992 30th anniversary show as well.
Yeah, sure.
Please.
Sure.
But start with the first Dylan show.
Yeah, the first Dylan show I went to was in 78. I think it was in September 78. I was a senior in high school. And very coincidentally, it was about a week after I had seen Bruce Springsteen for the first time. And that's another podcast, that whole experience. But so, I went to see Dylan, and, at that time, Dylan was my adolescent hero. Him and Thurman Munson and the New York Yankees. They were the two guys that I looked up to. And as an adolescent does, I had a hero worship for both of them. So, I don't have a lot of specific memories about that first Dylan show. It was at the Garden.
Street Legal, right?
What's that?
He was supporting Street Legal at the time?
He was supporting Street Legal, which is an album I really liked. It got mixed reviews at the time, but I really liked it and continue to like it. And speaking of remixes, I think it sounds better now. But what I do remember is just being so damn happy to be there. I was just happy I didn't care what he did. He could have came out and read the phone book. I was just so happy to be there. And I was way up in what they used to call it Blue Heaven. I don't know if they still call it that.
At the Garden?
Yeah. I was way up in the back. The whole garden was smoking pot. That wasn't my thing, but I think I got a contact high just from being there, because I remember the top of my head like buzzing, and I just was just thrilled to be there, and that's what I remember most about it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, because it's the energy, the memories, the excitement of seeing somebody by that time you had idolized for a couple of years. It was like going to see the Messiah. I'm sure you had, by the 78, you were well into him for a couple of years, and it was like, I'm getting my chance to see him for the first time.
Right. I mean, a real living human being.
Yeah.
I think he had background singers, if I remember correctly. And I remember being a little thrown by that.
Yeah. Well, he heavily used them, obviously, as you know, on Street Legal, and the next couple of albums, he used a lot of backing vocals and stuff. And I talked about it earlier in the show. The live album that came, I think, out of that tour afterwards was the Budokan album, which was I struggle with that one still because of the I think it's a little too heavy with the backing singers. What do you feel about him and using the female backing vocals so prominently then?
I remember when Budokan came out, and I got it. It may be my least favorite Dylan record.
Okay, so I'm not crazy for saying I'm not.
No, it didn't. There's a sense that he was kind of mailing it in. During a long career, that's going to happen.
Ups and downs, right?
Ups and downs, particularly if you're a genius.
Yeah, and it just seems like a little bit of a mailing in. So maybe when you caught him that first time, that was the start of that, maybe a little bit. But you wouldn't have known that because
I didn't care.
You didn't care. You didn't care. You were there, and you were seeing him
up there. Yeah,
you were seeing him there, and you really caught on with Bob at a point in his career, which was very transitional, because obviously after Street Legal, he jumps into what we call the Christianity trilogy,
the gospel records.
The gospel records with Slow Train Coming, Saved, and Shot of Love. So, which is a period that obviously he gets vilified for, but I mentioned it earlier. There, especially Slow Train Coming, which is a favorite record of mine. There is some great music individually on all three of those records.
Absolutely. Saved lost me a little bit, but Slow Train Coming and Shot of Love, I love those two records.
Absolutely. And what was the track on that was left off Shot of Love, but then they put it on CD? Was that The Groom Still Waiting at the Altar?
Waiting at the Altar.
So it didn't make it onto the LP, but on CD they threw it on.
My memory is it was not on the original LP. And I remember reading in one of the trade publications that he had left the best song off the album. Which,
as we know, he does quite often.
Now, I would submit Every Grain of Sand was probably the best song. On that particular record. But Groom Still Waiting at the decision to leave, that's almost as bad as leaving Strawberry Fields off of Sgt. Pepper. But
or Blind Willie McTell off Infidels.
That's true too. Yeah.
So you obviously you start to see Bob Dylan in 1978. I am assuming that every time Bob came into the area, you took a chance to see him probably more than once on one occasion, especially in those early days.
In '86, when he was touring with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I saw him 3 times in 1 week.
And you gave me such a great recording a year ago of a nice broadcast of that tour, and you saw that show 3 times.
3 times in 1 week.
And remember, that's pre Wilburys, folks. That's pre Traveling
Yeah.
Wilburys as well.
Yeah. I mean, Dylan was on, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. You could just tell they were thrilled to be there.
Yeah, now see that period of Bob's in the '80s there is, I would say from say Saved to basically, I don't know, maybe Oh Mercy is kind of a considered his lost period, like McCartney's '80s period is lost. And these are conversations that, excuse me, you and I have had. And McCartney's '80s period is in the middle of being reevaluated 40 years on now. Where do you think Bob's kind of '80s output is considered now? I mean, do you think he was mailing in too much,
I think, and Infidels, I think, is a great record. I really like Empire Burlesque. I like Someone Knocked Out Loaded. And that bootleg that just came out with, what was that called? Springtime in New York?
Yeah, volume 16.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to that, and boy, if that's mailing it in, that's a pretty high level of not paying attention.
Right. Right, because with hindsight and perspective, 40 years, we can say that's pretty damn good. But
I mean, he
at
did
the
Dark
time,
Eyes,
right?
Yeah, Brownsville Girl,
Awesome.
Sweetheart Like You,
These are Man of Peace. These are high quality songs.
Yeah.
High quality songs.
High Connection to My Heart.
Yeah. But then he kind of comes out of that period and kind of comes back with the first comeback record, which is really considered Oh Mercy, which is the first album produced by Daniel Lanois.
Yeah, I love that record. I love that whole sound.
Right.
Yeah, kind of other than sound, kind of similar to Blonde on Blonde, that we're in another universe, some other place sound to
it. Which, moving ahead in the timeline a little bit, 2 years later,
go back to a concert memory real quick.
Please.
So in 1981, I think it was in October 1981, I saw him at the old Brendan Byrne Arena. And again, before the internet, before all the media. So all I knew is he booked Brendan Byrne Arena, and he had been doing the gospel shows.
Right.
And actually, he played a couple of gospel shows in New York City. I did not go to those. I regret that. I should have, but I didn't. So I remember saying to myself, me and my friend Lenny De Palma, who's still a big Dylan fan, you know what? He's playing Brendan Byrne Arena. Let's go see him. We don't mind the gospel stuff. Maybe he'll do some of the rock stuff. So we go, and it's sold out. Place is mobbed. And he comes out. He does the first two gospel songs. Very good. He's got the background singers. I think Al Cooper was on the organ, I think.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. That show. Mick Taylor may have been on guitar. Somebody, so high level stuff.
Sure.
And then the third song, he does Like a Rolling Stone.
on the gospel tour.
I thought the roof was going to blow off the top of the arena. It was like an eruption. The place went so crazy. And it was a really good version of Like a Rolling Stone. And then he did mostly his rock catalog after that with some gospel material. And then for the encore, he did It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. And, when he comes out, he's doing the encore. And right before he started, just an acoustic, he did just him on the acoustic guitar. It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding. I see him looking into the first couple of rows. And he goes, hey, I see the editors of Rolling Stone are here this evening to check me out. He goes, well, let me tell you guys something. You're invited after the show because I want to check you out. And wow. I remember thinking this guy's a badass
because he doesn't give a crap.
He just called out all the editors of Rolling Stone.
He just called you all out because that's Bob.
Yeah, go backstage later and kiss my ass.
Yeah, exactly. So you bring up a point which I'd like to ask you to get your take on this as well, because having seen him in concert so many times, a lot of people are not fans of Bob in concert because the arrangements of his songs are so different. As a veteran Dylan concert goer, does that bother you?
At first it did because I didn't get it, right? And I often don't get other people's genius at first. That's why they're geniuses. I've come to really appreciate it and really love it because, his work is a living, breathing entity. So every time I see him, he's constantly reinterpreting it. He's bringing it to different places. He's evoking different images, different feelings. And, you don't get the same Like a Rolling Stone twice. If you get Like a Rolling Stone at all.
At all.
Yeah, I would say I've seen him over 50 times. He's probably done Like a Rolling Stone about a third of the time.
Right. And that's folks, that's somebody who's seen Bob Dylan over 50 times.
Right.
And you've only seen it a handful of times.
Yeah, yeah. And, recently, I think due to his age, he's been doing pretty much the same set list. And I can certainly understand that. I'm getting older myself. But until I would say the last 4 or 5 years, he was constantly changing the set list. You just never knew.
You never knew what you were going to get.
You never knew what you were going to get. And, so I would go see him, twice in a week. And really, it was a 70% different set list.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you weren't wasting your money. And so I've really come to appreciate it. And, he's kind of, he now sings the songs like an older gentleman who's lived a life full of victories and regrets.
As most of us have.
Yeah.
As most of us have.
I really like that. And, I know, for instance, Paul McCartney has a different philosophy. He wants to give people what they paid for, give them the record. And that's great too. And, I really enjoy that as well. And, but, Bob's a different experience. And if you're going to go see him, you have to know that.
You have to know that going in. And
Yeah.
I think people have been won over by that. Because not only that, you're getting a totally unique experience when you go to see a Bob concert, especially before, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, up until he got older, by people like who are McCartney diehards like myself and my co-host Tom Agnotti. We would give our left arm for McCartney to do a thing like that, where 70% it's changed up.
Yeah.
So I think Dylan fans should be really fortunate that they're getting such at that time. You could see basically a different set list almost every other night when you'd go see him.
Yeah, I think it was this show, Andy, that you and I saw together. I'm pointing to the concert shirt.
Yeah,
in November 2019. All right, when he came out and did that encore Ballad of the Thin Man, and hit that guitar riff, that raunchy guitar riff. Though I've seen him over 50 times, I had never seen him do something like that. And as you remember, the crowd went bananas.
Crazy. And this is
look at this old guy. Where did that come from?
And as you well know, and as I've learned, he doesn't play the guitar that in concert often. He just kind of stands behind and plays the keyboards. But
he
got
started about 2002, 2003. He went primarily behind the keyboards.
Right, but it's still so when he gets the guitar, it's like
it's fun.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. Tell us, Bob, quickly before we segue into your top favorites, albums and songs. Tell me a little bit about the '92 30th anniversary show, because that was like the star-studded event of all star-studded events, and you were there.
Yeah, I was, and I feel very fortunate to be there. It was just one tremendous act after the next. There really wasn't a dud in the whole show, which is unusual for those type of shows. I mean, I had been at Live Aid and a few other of those type of shows, and they were always choppy, not particularly well produced, a lot of confusion. This one was really crisp and done really well. I mean, one act came out after the other, and it just, Johnny Cash and Neil Young and Tom Petty and Roger McGuinn and Stevie Wonder, Eric Clapton, on and on and on. The highlight, the Clancy Brothers.
Which goes all the way back. Yeah, the band, the Clancy Brothers.
Tracy Chapman. Eddie Vedder, who at the time wasn't that well known, did Masters of War.
He did Masters of War.
Who's this guy?
Right.
Because it was a killer version. But the highlight of the night, for me, without question, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. Nothing else was even close is when George Harrison came out.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that.
It was just,
Yeah.
I mean, he came out, he looked great. He was in great form. He had a great voice. Son of a bitch, his guitar sounded like he was a Beatle. You know that
You
sound
saw
that he
Beetle.
gets? You
Yeah,
know
the
that
twangy.
sound that he gets that I don't know where it comes from?
It's kind of almost like a Birds-esque type sound that he gets
Yeah,
going on
yeah,
there a little
yeah.
bit, but
And he was just again, I don't know if I was just so pleased that I was seeing him. You know, I
see
should probably
this.
watch the tape, but
Watch it, but I tell you what, it's goosebumps. You mentioned it, and what a classy move by Bob, right? When you watch that song, when you watch them all singing back pages and they all take a verse,
he let
right?
George go last.
He let George go last.
Yeah.
He lets of the song, and then he defers to the Beatle
Right.
to close out the number. Goosebumps just even thinking about it now. And you were there.
I don't know if you ever heard this story told by George Harrison, but they were recording the second Wilburys album, and they were in some big mansion that had an interior balcony over a courtyard that was enclosed, you know, for privacy and stuff. And they had a lot of instruments down there. So George says he's up early, you know, one morning for them. You know, he's up and he's walking around the balcony, and he just sees Dylan, you know, tooling around, writing on the piano. So he goes, you know, I stand and I'm watching him and I'm watching him. All of a sudden, I see Dylan looking around because I guess he sensed someone was looking at him. So he goes, you know, Bob looked up and goes, George, what are you doing? He goes, I just wanted to watch the master at work. So Dylan said, you don't have to watch me. You were a Beatle.
Wow. Never heard that one.
Yeah,
that's
pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Wow.
You watched me for you were a Beatle.
See, but
so they had a lot of mutual admiration for each other.
Oh, without question. That mutual admiration is evident in everything that they did. So it's amazing to see. That's a great story.
Bob came out and did song to Woody, which was song for Woody, which was tremendous. Girl from the North Country, tremendous. And then it surprised me. He did It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding, which was really, really phenomenal. But I'd have to, as good as Bob was, as good as Neil Young was, probably the highlight of the night was George Harrison.
Wow. And then I believe he also did Absolutely Sweet Marie too, right?
Yes, crushed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely crushed it. And Harrison looked so happy to be there. And
because as we know, George's appearances in a live setting were very scarce throughout his post-Beatle career. He didn't tour that often. So when he made it on stage,
his last live appearance?
He did a show a few months later in London, but the same year. He did a show supporting the Labour Party in England a few months later. But that same George toured heavily in '92. He did a tour of Japan with Eric Clapton's band in '92. So, and then he obviously appeared for Bob the same year, and then so that was his last year of touring. So that was the last time anybody had a chance to see him on that, especially in this area, in the New York area, to see him live was that year. Yeah. So you saw it.
Reminds me of another great Dylan concert experience that I had. I think it was in 2000. When did George pass away?
2001.
All right, so
November.
I think it was in 2002. About a year later, I think in November 2002, if I remember correctly, and Dylan was at the Madison Square Garden, and he said, they're doing a concert for George, or they're about to do a concert for George, but I can't be there, or I couldn't be there because I'm on the road. And George was such a good buddy of mine. And then Dylan did something. It was, I don't know if you ever heard it.
You shared it. No, you shared it with me, and it's incredible.
Okay. I mean, really, talk about the hair on the back of my neck growing up. I mean, he really delivered that. It was so heartfelt.
Yeah, and if there was one person missing from that concert for George, it was Bob, for sure.
Right.
but
Right.
he was on tour, and he
He's on tour.
obviously the next year he included something a lot in his set list. Obviously,
Yeah, yeah. But I think I was there the first time he had ever done it.
he had debuted it, and
Yeah,
he was another awesome experience. That
yeah.
the legend that you are, Bob Davison, is just. I mean, every new story that you tell that you've told me, you shared, whether it's with our mutual friends or just to me directly. I am absolutely amazed. I mean, you are the Dylan savant of all savants. You really are.
Well, actually, as you probably know, I mean, there's people that bring being a Dylan fan just to a whole different level.
Yeah,
There's people that've been to 300 or 400 shows.
yeah.
It just goes on forever. Another fun thing about Dylan, particularly back in the 70s and 80s, he has since put out and issued a lot of these bootlegs.
Mm-hmm.
But at the time, they were actual bootlegs.
Right, right.
You
Like,
would
yeah,
buy them. They were just plain white album covers with brown paper lining and
yeah. I mean, of course,
no labels.
the legendary one being the Great White Wonder, the basement tapes with the band being the
Yep,
first
yep,
like
yep,
bootleg.
yep. Concert from Albert Hall that turned out
Sure,
not to be from Albert Hall, from some other place.
Manchester Free Trade Hall, actually. Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I had those bootlegs. That was just
when
tremendous.
before Dylan endorsed them and realized that it was pretty profitable to put them
Right,
out
right.
himself by throwing these together.
And you really felt like you had something special then because you
Yeah,
did.
you absolutely did.
There was a
You
place
know,
called Crazy Rhythms in Montclair, which was a record store right on Bloomfield Avenue that would sell that stuff. And
I'm
at the
sure.
time, it was big money for me. And I remember paying $20 for that Albert
And,
Hall record. That was big
and
money
that's
in
big money, man.
1982 or
That's
whatever it was.
big for
That was
because if
big
you bought
money.
if you bought an album that was $3 or $4 or $5 for a
Yeah.
new album, $20 for a bootleg that's big. That's big time, baby.
It was worth it.
It absolutely was worth it. All right, so just kind of going to close it out here with kind of what we do on two legs. We're going to do here is when we have our guests on, we're going to do a top 10 list of both song, if you have it, or even off the, I'm sure you could do it off the top of your head, of top 10 and Dylan albums and top 10 Dylan songs in any order. Doesn't have to be 10 to 1 through 10. In any order.
I've always been a big fan of Dylan albums because I think in totality, the sum is greater than the parts, or whatever that saying is, or the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. So I've always been a Dylan album fan, and I like listening to his albums. I of course listen to the songs, but I really enjoy listening to the album. So Blonde on Blonde is my favorite Bob Dylan record because I think lyrically it's just fantastic. I think the production quality of it is just amazing. It sounds like it was recorded at 3 a.m. in some other universe because it probably was.
It probably was.
Yeah. There's just something about it that I find really just amazing. Just the artistic contribution that was. And I think when it came out, Andy, in 66?
66, yep.
I mean, it came out as the same day as Pet Sounds, if I remember correctly. But who was doing that? Where did that come from? And then Revolver a little later. I mean, where did that stuff come from? Just absolutely stunning. And Visions of Johanna is on Blonde. And if that's all Dylan ever did, that'd be enough. I mean,
and we've talked about this. It's really, obviously that could be Dylan's masterpiece, but I prefer, and I think you do too, the live version that is on the live version from
the
England,
acoustic version.
The acoustic version.
Yeah.
I mean, is just that slays it for me. I listen to that more than the album version.
Yeah, I think that version of Visions of Johanna and Strawberry Fields for me are probably the two finest examples of artistic rock and roll from the 1960s. Just both really just amazing. And so Highway 61, of course, I still listen to that record all the time. Desolation Row, Tombstone Blues, From Buick 6, Like a Rolling Stone.
Takes a lot to laugh.
Queen, it takes a lot to laugh. Queen Jane, approximately. I mean, as far as there is any underrated Bob Dylan songs, Queen Jane approximately doesn't get the love that it deserves.
No, that's you don't see that one on a lot of lists or on even in
Yeah,
compilations.
that's just a tremendous song. I love Modern Times, right?
Oh,
That's the 2005. Uh,
6. Yep.
a six. Love that record. Love the whole sound of it. Really, and for him to put out a record at that in 2006, 65 years old. I mean, he still
It's
had it, and
oh my God, it's
he
incredible.
showed it. And
Yep.
Love and Theft,
Yep.
I like a lot. Mississippi's on that record. One of the best things he's ever done. John Wesley Harding, I think lyrically is probably his height.
His height lyrically. Okay.
Yeah, it's so dense lyrically, and it's not repetitive. And again, the images that he fosters with that record is something to listen to. And as I get the story, I think Charlie McCoy was one of the session musicians on that. Is that his name? Do you remember?
Yep. He's on a lot of that period of Dylan's
Yeah,
music.
yeah. Well, he's one of the session musicians, and Charlie McCoy reports that Dylan did not use a lyric sheet. He sang all the songs off the top of his head.
For John Wesley Harding, which obviously, as everybody knows in the history, is his first kind of post kind of accident album, which comes out at the end of '67, in the midst of rock and pop music going totally off the wall with psychedelic music, and Bob comes out with John Wesley Harding, which is totally not indicative of the music.
That was Christmas week, 1967.
Correct.
And in hindsight, it was brilliant because the Beatles had just done Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which was brilliant. Unreal record.
All right.
And I think on a certain level, Bob knew, well, I'm not going to do that. That's not who I am.
Well, he didn't like it though either.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that right?
Oh, well, from what I've read, he was not a big fan of the Sgt. Pepper material at all. And what I've read over the last 2 years,
I bet you he is now.
Probably now, but back then it was like, I'm not doing that. That's
yeah. Well, it may have been a little the they had a friendly competition, I think, and
sure,
yeah. Which is I think they made each other better artists.
Of course,
Bob Dylan. So I think for him to do that was just really cool. So I like that. I think it holds up well as a great record. I love Time Out of Mind from '97, I think.
Yep.
And I just remember being so thrilled when I heard that because I'm like, oh my God, guy's still a genius.
50s, probably at that time, 55, 56 years old. And
yeah. Cold Iron Bounds. Not Dark Yet.
Not Dark Yet. To Make You Feel My Love. Standing in the Doorway.
Yeah. I saw that tour at the Newark Pack, or whatever they call it, the fancy theater down in Newark, and that theater had just opened, and I saw that tour, and I was second row, and he opened with Absolutely Sweet Marie.
Wow.
Yeah, which just blew us away.
Incredible.
I was down there with a friend of mine, Bob, and we were sitting there going, holy Christ, we're in the presence of greatness. It was one that may have been the best I ever saw him.
Time Out in second row.
Yeah. He had Larry Campbell was on guitar.
Yep.
He's, I just saw him about a month ago as a solo act. One of the greatest guitarists ever. So I love that record. I love that tour. Bringing It All Back Home, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Mr. Tambourine Man and It's All Right, Mom, Only Bleeding are on the same record.
Yes,
for the love of God.
On the same record.
The same record. We're not even talking about Subterranean Homesick Blues and the other wonderful songs
that are on there. Love Minor Zero, No Limit. Not even that. Which is
God.
Right.
Love Minor Zero, No Limit. What a song that is.
Right. All on the same record.
What are we up to, like 7 or something like that?
You've got 3 more.
All right. Well, Blood on the Tracks.
Of course.
I talked about that. Rough and Rowdy Ways. And that may move up the list. 5 years from now, that may crack the top 5 because that's what Dylan records do.
they really get better with age, don't they?
They get better. They get better with age, and I guess what I got one more.
One more.
All right, I guess I'll go with Tempest.
Tempest. Okay, from
What was that?
2012.
2012, 2011.
2012. Yep. So
Yeah,
you
just
have
one great song after the other.
yeah, and of course closing it with the great tribute to John Lennon. Of
Yeah,
course.
Roll on John, right?
Roll on
Yeah,
John.
yeah.
Did you have a chance to see him do that live at all?
No,
Okay. But he
no.
does play a lot of songs from that album, have been a part of his set list over the last decade, like early
He
Roman
clearly
Kings.
likes that record.
He likes that. He likes early Roman Kings. We saw him do that in
Yeah,
2019. Duquesne Whistle. You know, he's featured.
Duquesne Whistle.
Yeah, he's featured quite a number of tracks off that album live.
What's the
So
other
he
big
likes it.
track off that record?
I don't have it handy with me at the moment.
But it's not. I'm just not thinking of it.
But it's funny. You have a pretty. I did too. You've got a decent amount of recent Bob albums, and Bob Dylan over the last 25 years has really obviously continued a renaissance that has every record. I mean, they're all been great. I mean, there's other titles in there, but I mean, every from Rough and Rowdy Ways to Time Out of Mind, these are
Yeah,
as good as anything he did in the 60s.
I think that's right. And I'm not one like to make a competition, out of being a rock artist, but he's had as good as a post 60 career as anybody. Just in terms of the original material that he's put out.
I mean, he's 80 now. He's going to be 81 in a few weeks, right?
We're not even talking about the Sinatra records that he did.
No, the covers. Right.
I'm Bob Dylan. I think I'll do 3 Sinatra records.
I'll do 3 Sinatra records. I'll do an album of standards, triplicate. I mean,
yeah.
3 Sinatra.
We saw him do one of the Sinatra tunes in concert back in November. It was great.
Yeah,
he stood up there in front of the microphone. Remember that?
Yeah.
Crooned it out
and did it.
Yeah,
and did it. So it's just a remarkable career, and it's a discography of work that, given the proper attention, it takes a lifetime to really appreciate, and you've done that as a Dylan fan, and it's remarkable.
We could do another podcast on his first record, Bob Dylan, the freewheeling Bob Dylan, the times they are a-changing, and another side of Bob Dylan. We haven't even talked about those records.
No, the first 4. We didn't even talk about the first 4.
5-star Stone Cold classic records.
The first 4, absolutely. Yeah. So it's I mean, and there's a couple Bob Dylan podcasts out there, and there's a really good one, and they talk about all the albums individually. But it's an amazing amount of work and material to even dive through, let alone the live stuff and the bootleg stuff that's out there. I mean, it's got 15 volumes of bootleg series. That alone could take years to work your way through.
Yeah.
But I know you have.
And those early records, I mean, Restless Farewell, that's like a movie. That's like a screenplay.
Yeah, a lot of the
Spanish
songs
Leather. I remember I was like 13 or 14 listening to Boots of Spanish Leather. And, he's heartbroken about, some girl who went to Italy. And
right.
At that age, I knew nothing about that.
The backstory with Susie and all that. Yeah.
But I knew nothing about those emotions.
Oh, of course. Right.
Yeah, they were like real adult emotions. And again, I remember thinking, I don't know what he's singing about, but I want to do that someday. whatever that is, he's heartbroken about. I want that to happen to me.
I want that to happen to me. Yeah. No, it's
Masters of War.
Masters of War, possibly one of his best things.
You can't put out a more angry song than that.
1963, I want to say.
He's pretty pissed off.
Yeah. I mean,
he's correctly so.
And correctly so. He's been through a lot and traveled and done so much. It's lived through a lot of stuff, and he talks about it and does it in such a great form as a true artist does.
Yeah.
He really does. So
he didn't lose the art while being angry.
No, some people do.
Yeah, that's easy to do.
but he didn't. He
No, he
never
did
has.
not. Yeah,
He can channel that anger and turn it into Masters of War or
right,
Simple
right.
Twist of Fate or Idiot Wind or anything.
We didn't even talk about those songs. Simple Twist
No.
of Fate. That's another screenplay.
Yeah.
Martin
We saw,
Scorsese should make a movie out of that.
he should. We saw him do that as well in
Yeah.
2019. So yeah, so we'll wrap it up here. So Bob, I want to thank you for coming on today to talk to us for a little while about Bob Dylan. You're obviously your favorite artist and one that you know so well, and you have turned me on to over the last couple of years. And God, I thank every day that I've done that, because I have learned so much as a fan of music and a reader of music and a studier of popular music and everything about it. It's you've unleashed it, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Well, Andy, you've done the same for me, particularly in regards to progressive rock. I was a fan of that when I was younger. I'd kind of gotten away from it, and hearing you talk about it again with the enthusiasm that you bring to it, I started listening to those Yes records again, and King Crimson and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Renaissance, and it's been a good experience. Early Genesis, Peter Gabriel's Genesis. We just saw Steve Hackett a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah,
just amazing. Yeah,
amazing. So,
well, let me close with this. Just a pro tip,
please do.
If there's anyone listening tonight that's not a Bob Dylan fan, that's not overly familiar with his music other than the hits, do yourself a favor, listen to Series of Dreams tonight.
Yes.
That's a good starting point.
That's a very good starting point. Well, that'll cap it on that for this installment of episode 2 of Andy's Music Vault here. So, Bob Davison, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you,
Appreciate
brother.
it.
I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Thank you very much. And we'll have you on a future episode, maybe to discuss a little prog rock, if you like that.
Until we rock again.
Okay, everybody. We'll see you next time.